club, I see. All your fellow platinum mates are giving you a bit of a razz there.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. It's a lot of people when you look out there, isn't it?
It is, but it's also our family.
It is your family. That's exactly
family.
right. Yeah. Okay, so where to start? Let's talk about Basia. What's your background? Where did you start I Love Real Estate?
Okay, so this is going to be a little bit hard now because my husband just flew in this morning.
We knew about that and you didn't. Just hold it there and put it on your chin.
So this is probably getting a little bit close to my heart now. It's easy to speak about your life when we disattach ourselves from the people that we've worked so hard for and what our life is all about. So pre-Dimphna, going back to 2016, Jan, I set out for 2016 to be my year. I've been a supportive wife and a mum of 4 children. We're very family orientated, so most of our life with my husband, we've helped our family quite a lot. And you get through life and you realise that everything that you do is about family, but sometimes we forget about ourselves. And I wasn't doing very well in 2015. I think we got ourselves to a situation where we became slightly workaholic. You get into that vortex of family and the logistics of life and, coping with your own stuff between your ears and in your heart. You try and do the best you can to be the best mum you can, the best parent. You pay your bills and you try and do financially better in life. And my husband and I were working very hard when we got to Perth. But 2015, we were exhausted, and I certainly was. And I think women who have had children, 4 pregnancies, and our children are ranging from 22 to about 10 at the moment, so quite a long span. Yes, I was tired, I was exhausted, and I could feel myself going in the wrong direction. So from a personal development point of view, I was definitely ready for a change. Financially, pre-2016, life was very difficult, and I think we also made it difficult because sometimes when we don't know better, we make decisions based on not necessarily a plan or a strategy or goals or that blueprint or that peg in the sand. We make decisions based on where we're at that stage. And for us, reactive, absolutely reactive as opposed to proactive. And our reaction was to what work required from us, what training, and we gypsied around Australia with my husband's training for, I think, part of 10 to 12 years. So my eldest son has probably had about 12 homes in his life, about, 5.
It doesn't hurt him. I had the same.
Yeah, they do become resilient, but it does take a lot of work from parents to create a home for their children wherever you go. And often when you try and create a home and a life that's calm and loving, you do tend to do it at your own expense. So yeah, they are resilient. I think it's done Damien very well. But yeah, life was not very easy, and my motto was that whatever we've done is always came hard. It felt hard. So 2016 was going to be my year, as in I was going to take a little bit more time and resources to myself from my family. And I wanted to set out to do something that was to do with my health, and I wanted to find out, apart from work within our business and my children and supporting my beautiful husband, what is it that I wanted to do in life? I've made a lot of sacrifices and I made decisions that weren't necessarily putting me first. And I got lost in the process, as we often do. So I didn't know what to do, and I know that I was getting unhealthy at the time. So there's a gentleman in this room that I haven't seen for 2 years, and he's probably the reason why I'm here. I went to a boot camp in Gold Coast, a health boot camp. At my table was a lovely lady and a guy from Sydney, and when I got back to Perth months later, I got this messenger.
Say their name?
No. I got back home and I got this messenger text around June the 8th. And the messenger text from Peter said, there's this lady, Dimphna coming to Perth, and I know you want to get into real estate. You should see her. And so I did. I made everything happen on that day, even though it was really hard because it was our work day. And my mind said, don't do it, because I had so many things on that day. But my heart said, do it, and I didn't know why. And even though when I was driving to Fremantle to see Dimphna, again, it's that tearing in your heart and in your gut that says, what are you doing? This is crazy. This is like something that you shouldn't be part of. And I remember driving there and
Timeshare. I was selling timeshare.
Yeah, exactly. So, and you know, people are afraid of these sales things that's going on. But my gut was saying go, and I did. And I have to say I'm very grateful to that, because there's a gentleman in the audience today and I haven't had a chance to see him at all. And it turns out that it was actually him who was with ILRE Real Estate in 2015-16 already. He spoke to Peter, and Peter sort of said to me, oh, by the way, there's this lady called Dimphna coming to Perth. So I just this week found out that it's really down to him being part of the community. So anyway, I got there, I met Dimphna on stage, and probably within half an hour, I think it's your energy, Dimphna. And then when economics came into it, and strategy, and creativity, and I'm sure somewhere in that was about life and balance and doing it for you and your family, and I was quite hooked on that. So I don't think I've ever signed $10,000 away, and I didn't tell my husband, and I just took the plunge. I literally just knew what to do, and again, it's got to do with that kind of intuition, isn't it? Sometimes in life, when we let go of the mind and we allow ourselves to go into the depth of here, we are already guided. And I think that was the day where I just went with the flow.
Okay. So, I mean, obviously going in, you'd negatively geared, you'd just gone for natural growth previously, not really looking at the market and things like that. So it was stepping into a more strategic approach to achieve what you wanted.
Look, absolutely. We've done two property, which were obviously negatively geared in Sydney. And that came at a great cost to us, because, while you're paying the mortgage and the outgoings, you do take away from yourself in your own family budget. So our lifestyle was compromised. As we travelled with my husband's training, all the costs were up to us, so we had to, out of one wage, do that. On top of it, fund, 2 big mortgages at the time. Yeah. So big sacrifices away from my children, us as a couple. So that was painful. And while we loved property, we hated the fact that it's costing us so much.
Yeah. Yeah, and that obviously creates a lot of fear in your life, about fear of making another mistake or failure or any of those things. All that subconscious stuff starts to come up. So this was a joint venture that you'd done with your brother in Sydney prior to I Love Real Estate. So this was the one with the big mortgage. But obviously Sydney's done well, so you've done okay out of it.
Well, yes, we have done very well since 2016 with the natural growth in Sydney. But that property was really a very negatively geared property, which still is, until January next year when we're converting it into Airbnb and holiday house. It's always costed us a lot of money, and the market in Sydney for about, as you know, 15 years was stale and negative in some areas. So that property is, it's $1.65 million, and you've got to fund it at a time when the valuations came at about 1.5, and the cost to do this house was probably about a 1.7 at the time. So, it was painful. Lovely property, but it was hurting
painful.
us.
And this was your PPR in Perth that you were also funding.
Yes, so we got to Perth, and we got to Perth actually in a high booming market. And very quickly we realised that we just can't buy into it. Renting was difficult, so we actually got moved around, I think, 2 or 3 times before we finally said we have to buy something, anything reasonable, but we have to get off the rental market. So eventually we ended up buying a property, and we bought, this was a second PPR. The first one was a very humble little red brick home that we renovated, paid it off as quickly as we could, and moved on to the next one. And this was a bit of a strategy behind it, because, you don't always have to live in a very expensive suburb. And Perth, at the time that we bought this property, was actually on the low. It was declining. And I kind of thought, why not buy a property in a higher market borrow a lot more, and obviously that's mentally for us was a very difficult thing because we've never borrowed that much for ourselves. But we knew that if we could find that ugly duckling in a good suburb on a nice street, we could add value to it. And it just happened that our children's high schools were not too far. So yeah, it was a really big mental hike from buying a very humble red brick home to buying this one, and this property is in a nice suburb in Sydney, and we bought the house that sort of no one wanted. I think that house was on the market for, I think for about 6 months. And the strategy behind that was that no one wanted the house, so there was something wrong with it.
Was it haunted too? We've had a few haunted houses this weekend.
No, but it was tenanted initially, so I think that people either buy an investment property, but in that suburb they wouldn't have bought investment properties, and anyone who wanted a PPR would not have bought a rented house.
Because they didn't want a renovation. Yeah. Okay, so this was your starting position, which is, reasonably healthy, especially from an equity perspective, but cash flow, it's killing you.
Absolutely. I mean, just behind that, probably going back about 7 years prior to that, we didn't have that equity.
No.
So, we've just made that equity through hard work in the business, but also buying, renovating and uplifting. So, the cash flow was hurting us. Again, when you've got such a high negative cash flow, it takes away from whom? Yourself, right? So, while we could fund it with the work that we did, it was hurting. Yeah. Absolutely.
So your strategy moving forward was then one of let's get rid of some debt. Yeah. Cash flow, yes, but debt is obviously something that's pretty high on your agenda.
Yeah. As with a lot of people, when you are in your own business, you're relying on that one income. So, and both of us worked in the business. So, my job was reliant on my husband, and my husband's job was reliant on his health and well-being to be able to work. And if anything went wrong, we lose. I lose my job, he loses his job, and we lose everything that we're funding our life with. So, predominantly, my goal was to reduce debt, so that to take that pressure off us having to do all of that ourselves.
So, deal number one after joining I Love Real Estate, going to a boot camp and going, oh my God, what's going on here? When did you actually join Platinum?
So Quantum, August, I think, 2016.
Okay.
And Perth boot camp, October.
October.
And then pretty much in December I joined Platinum after Dimphna said, go and join Platinum, when I told her that I want to do apartments.
Yes, without any experience, she wants to do apartments, so you better do Platinum, I'm telling you. So you've done a 7 apartment development here, which obviously has got great uplift. And this is in a flat market. You've got to remember, Perth has been sitting at the bottom of the cycle for some time now. So, you can look at Sydney and, Sydney's done well. You could buy anything in Sydney and do well over the last few years, not necessarily going forward. But Perth has been sitting doing nothing for so long. So to make money in a Perth market where it's so flat is, you're doing you're making it out of what you create, not relying on any market forces.
Absolutely. So once I started to learn the material from I Love Real Estate, one thing came up is don't rely on the natural growth, which is what we've done for the 2 properties. And so really the word manufactured growth and exit strategies and uplift and just getting chunk deals really felt like this is what I'd like to do. And being a bit of a real estate junkie, driving by, looking at properties, for some reason the apartment concept kept popping up. So once I realised that I'd like to do something a little bit more than a subdivision or a couple of villa units, and I wanted to go into apartments, the next question was, well, where do I do it? Obviously, we live in Perth at the moment. At the time, Perth was, I would say, a depressed market. There's a lot of people in Perth still feeling like they're still on that downer, although, we are growing, and there's a lot of opportunities in Perth. So it was a bit of a risk when I talked to a few people, why am I doing this in Perth? However, when you think about location, when you think about manufacturing growth, If you think about subdivision, I mean, Perth has just undergone a huge rezoning, higher density movement, and it's going to continue with the population growth. So I thought, okay, let's do this. But not only that, I was very much an area expert in the area that we've built, because we lived our very first family PPR, that little humble red brick home, just happened to be about 4 or 5 houses down the road. So I knew the area and I knew the opportunity available there. And I remember Dimna talking about leverage from, you know, the richer cousins, so to speak. So around the corner is what we used to call the rich cousins live there, and we were on the poorer cousin side. So with the rezoning, I realised that if we do this, we can actually leverage off the more expensive properties, and therefore at the end of the build, the end result will be that our value for these properties will be higher than the standard apartment building that's even, you know, 2 streets away. So it has given us quite a lot of uplift in terms of equity. There's about
$900,000.
Yeah, there's about 130K's equity in each apartment the moment it's built. And we've just had a refinance, rezoned, pulled. I mean, my goal was to pull out all the money. We're going to have to leave not too much, but just a little bit in, just because the rents have gone down. And also, when the valuation with the bank is done, you have no control over that. So if someone else sells a unit because they're desperate to sell at a very low price,
It affects
that's
yours.
going to affect your valuation as well. Having said that, there's $130,000 or so per unit equity straight away, so it's a chunk deal. And we both wanted to do it to hold, so there's no sales.
So it's a hold of the lot. There's some lovely pictures of the insides there. And of course, there's the figures. So if you sold it, there's about $950,000 there, but of course you're going to keep them, and they should be neutral, positive.
Well, they were going to be positive about $10,000 to $11,000,
Right.
but obviously with the rents going down in the last couple of years, we've had to rent them out about $10 less. Mind you, they've rented within 2 weeks, so
Okay.
you know, people say
So they're going to be about 5 positive or so.
probably 10 negative, just with
10
the
negative.
10 negative with the extra NBN and Telstra costs that we had to sort of do because we didn't want to be held up. So that's miniature.
But that's only for the first year. So
Yeah, and
once you
after
come to
that-
second year, then you'll
They're
be
positive again. Yeah, so the uplift of Perth and what's going to happen in Perth over the next few years will well and truly compensate for that too.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so deal number 2, you're obviously hooked on the apartment cycle. What are you doing here?
So, as I said before to someone, I said, if you're onto a good thing, why not? Why change it?
That's your cookie cutter.
That's right. And you become an area expert, and I think that's very important. Sometimes we overcomplicate things, and I really like what we talked about, I think on one day, the KISS method. And interestingly, that was my method. And the first property apartments was actually with a JV builder. And both his method in life to do things in development is the KISS method, and so is mine. So keep it very simple. This block was bought, an offer was made March this year, and it's just around the corner, literally. And just replicate what we've done. However, this time, we've decided not to hold. We've decided to sell to get some money out and pay down the debt on that Sydney property that's got $1.65 million, because that was my goal, to do a few deals to pay that debt off.
And that's okay if you're doing a mix of hold and sell and hold and sell. You know, you got to balance off the two.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Basia's very, very clear on who her end market is. So, you know, doing an enormous amount of research and really knowing who that end buyer is going to be, so that you absolutely nail it, and you've got that
Absolutely.
sorted.
I mean, was it Michael that said the other day, you've got to know your end buyer. You need to know who's looking for what and for how much, and you've got to go reverse. You do your feasibility, you do all your hard work, but really it's very important to go backwards and say, who's my buyer, what do they want, and how much are they prepared to pay? Because that will actually determine how much you're going to get out of this project and whether it's going to be worthwhile for you to take on that risk of a development cost. You know, because it does cost a lot more. You do take on more risk and more. You've got to leverage off also in a different way as well.
So that will effectively halve your mortgage on Sydney.
Yeah, so for example, if we sell these after all the costs, I would probably say conservatively a third of it. I'm estimating 3 chunk deals to pay it off after
tax and other things.
Cost and tax, so 3.
Sure. Okay, so deal number 3 is another cookie cutter. Let's do it again. So what's the story with this one? Oops.
Oh.
Come back one.
So this one, I put an offer on deal number 2 around the corner, and then the neighbour to that property approached us and said, would that buyer be interested in buying my property? So that was bought off the market. So an offer was made on that property a month later in April. The clever thing that we've done is that when we put offers for all properties, and this is something that I've learned from my initial JV partner, is do it subject to the conditions that you want, because it is a higher risk. It is a market that's, flat, and you want to leverage off that and say, well, I'm going to take all that risk and I'm going to buy into it and buy myself time. And what we did it subject to DA approval for the apartments. So be very careful how you word your agreements, your contracts. And very cleverly we did it subject to apartments approval, but in a very general way. So if for any reasons the council was to approve it, but we wanted to pull out, or I wanted to pull out, I've got that ability to do it.
Yeah. So deal number 4 is a PPR deal for your son.
Yeah, so again, we're talking about, helping our families and having 4 children. I know that one day with the work that my husband and I have done, we are going to leave behind certain assets. It's very important for me to make sure that my children are not waiting for that. That by
they know how to manage it.
And they know how to manage money. And by the time that they will receive that, they won't even need it. So my eldest son is Damien, who's 22. And this year was able to help him out get into the real estate market. Again in Perth, going back onto what Dimphna used to say, buy at the right time, think about the future, where the market's going. And I'm a great believer in the Perth market. I mean, we've lived in Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, Hobart, and each time we saw the natural growth of those cities. So we know the natural growth eventually works. So I think I'm just leveraging off that and saying, hey, Perth is just about to wake up, and Perth will be doing well. And so
Agree with that.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's a really great market to get into. So this property was bought at an auction. Damien's just finishing university, so he's just done his 2 last exams on Friday. He does work part-time, and really it was just a matter of sort of pushing him off the cliff into the market and say, hey, get uncomfortable, do something that mum and dad are doing, and just start learning from us. And sometimes with children, we can't wait for them to get comfortable and ready and when they want to do it. Sometimes I think we do need to push them off a little bit.
You think?
Yeah, so...
I'm probably the biggest pusher of all.
Yeah. So
But he'll make a nice little profit on that, a bit of a renovation.
Absolutely. That's a multi-level strategy. There's various things you can do. The location is amazing. Again, location. It's about 3 to 4 k's from Perth City. It's less than a kilometre from the major freeways, just across the lake with beautiful views. And it was like a great-grandmother's property. Not even grandmother's, it was great-grandmother's property. When it was sold, I think it was sold at land value or just below. And what Damien decided to do is a quick reno of about $40,000 it ended up. And
it looks good.
It looks great. I mean, he did a lot of that work himself. He had a beautiful handyman to help him. But a lot of the work was done by himself, and it was hard. He had to work very hard to do it, but he did it. He decided to use sort of the exit strategy thing. And
Sorry, we're still on the other.
Yeah. And because he doesn't have a lot of money, he needs to make sure that this property is working for him. And again, Perth market is growing, but it's not as exciting perhaps as Sydney or Melbourne was. So his strategy was to do share house because that's what he feels comfortable.
Sure.
And
he's only 22.
Yeah. And he did say, look, Mum, Airbnb is great, but I do need to know that some of my rooms are going to be rented.
Yep.
So he's renting 3 to 4 rooms as a share house on a weekly basis. And then the other 1 or 2 rooms are Airbnb. And interestingly, I just looked at Sue. When the idea of Airbnb was put out, I mean, we've never done Airbnb. And I was channeling Sue all the way in Perth. Because I haven't done it, but I've learned a lot. Again, we leverage from each other, right? So over the last few months of this year, I was sort of looking at the Tip Tuesday from Sue about Airbnb, and it's amazing how much you learn. And so when I had to, with Damien, apply these strategies, it just came so naturally. And you know, the young boy got 3 bookings almost straight away and 3 beautiful raving reviews. And it's amazing how happy that makes you feel when that happens, because, you know, it's hard work, it's small wins, but they're amazing wins at the end of the day.
Very rewarding. So deal number 5 is negotiation on your business lease.
Yes, so I joined Platinum October or December 2016, and I was not in a good space as a person, as a woman. I didn't feel strong, and I didn't feel inner power, and I certainly did not feel I was going to ever negotiate a lease reduction of $38,000 in 2 years' time. But again, when you are mentored or you have someone behind you who sometimes just listens and says the right thing and just nudges you and looks at you and gives you that confidence to go, you can do this. And that's how the result of it. We've saved $38,000 this year as of the 1st of November on our lease, so 50% reduction. And again, it's going to a meeting and negotiating and standing your ground in a very assertive, kind way, but saying, hey, this is our worth. This is what we've contributed to the company or to the surrounding area. And we would like to be appreciated for that. So wrote a beautiful letter to the leasing manager. That was passed on to the CEO. And, you know, 2 weeks later, we got a letter saying that there'll be a reduction of 50% in our lease.
Yay.
So really amazing.
That paid for Platinum, didn't it?
Well, yes. That paid for Platinum. Yes. For 2 years of Platinum, plus I've got a little bit left. Yeah, I feel, to be honest, Damien, I mean, everything's wonderful that we do in life, and I think, you know, I love the fact that we're celebrating today.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't in my nature to celebrate what I've done. I used to just think about what I haven't done, and that bit of a perfectionist thing. But
and the culture is not to celebrate. Don't talk about it, but we need to.
Absolutely, and I see that in my children's life and at school. And the most thing that made me happy was Damien's house, because he can now see that things are in his control. He's still learning. Don't get me wrong. He's still learning. He's still not sure about certain things, but it is a process. It's he's under construction, and so are we. And I'm hoping that he's just realised that he doesn't have to depend on a paycheck, that he can actually do things in real estate and create that. And the second one that I'm most, really, to be honest, is most proud is that negotiation with the contract, because this is where I'm like, I've done this, right? It's the work that I've done myself. Yeah.
So this is that's the business premises, yeah?
Yeah, so we've been leasing for 11 years, and again, through talking with Tamara, you get ideas, you get sort of inspired, and it's like, oh, but why can't we actually do the premises ourselves? Why can't we build commercial? Why can't we do, and then sublease to others? So this is where the idea grew. My project for 2019 is going to be this. I'm feeling slightly challenged by it, which is a good thing.
You'll be right.
Love a challenge. Come on.
Yeah, but so looking for a block to build a commercial property on, or convert an existing one. It is going to be challenging in the area that I'm looking at, which is inner city sort of suburb. But again, you're leveraging, you know, the whole idea about leveraging from others. I used to just do everything myself, literally that sort of martyr, roll up your sleeves and do it yourself. And what I've learned is leverage and leverage and leverage. We can only do so much ourselves. We can be good at things, but we aren't perfect in everything. So buyer's agent, would I have ever done that? No, because I'm always sceptical. What do they want out of me? So buyer's agent, I've got people looking for properties for me now. Again, establishing relationships with real estate agents. That's been very interesting. It's amazing how you can convert and change people and relationships and work with them on that sort of professional level, but in a friendly way. I used to be so afraid of that. So that's going to be a very interesting project.
And of course, we talked about the fact that you're converting the Sydney house into a more positive cash flow.
Yeah, look, I think last year there was this point where we nearly sold that property. I mean, we've tried to sell it back in 2014, 15, and the biggest offer we got was $1.5 million. Some cheeky, probably investor wanted to get it, and I said no, I'm not selling. I was quite stubborn about it. Thankfully, I've held on to it because then we've leveraged off the Sydney growth recently. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of equity in that property at the moment. However, it's still a painful memory, and what I'd like to see, and that's probably where my third thing will be, to convert that property into a positive property and make it work for us finally, because it's a house that we're proud of. Yes, a bit emotionally involved because it's cost us so much money and effort. But I'd love to see that property working for us. Like a lot of your properties you've done that you've converted, and I've been so inspired by those people who challenged themselves and done that. It's not in my nature to create properties that are positively
geared.
Cash flow geared. So yes, I'd like to see that property next year. So December the tenants are moving out, and as of January, it will be on the market as a holiday rental. It's only like down the road in Little Bay, Sydney, from the beach. So the fact that we didn't even look at it that way before is incredible.
That's great.
Yeah.
Very good. So some of the more important things than real estate, I guess we've talked about already, but mainly your family and the flow-on effect to the kids.
Yeah, look, I am in such a wonderful place. Still growing, still learning.
Everybody is.
Still have my moments,
Everybody does.
You just go inside of yourself and you feel the pain sometimes of things. And the one thing that I've undertook in 2016 is personal growth. And when I found out about I Love Real Estate and met Dimphna, you don't know that it's not real estate. You don't know that it's not about building and making money. Of course, that's part of it. But there comes a point in your life where you realise that what I've been offered was such a beautiful gift, because it's in the one place where I found, and we all talked about it, community and relationships and friendships and growth, and people who stretched you and looked at you and said, why not you? Why not you? So I've grown incredibly. I have a lot of work still to do, but I know my family, my husband's so much better off because I've challenged myself. I've stepped outside of my fears. I mean, for me to stand here today is literally facing 4 of my biggest fears. So, as Brad says, you just push through it, get uncomfortable. And I love that. I used to hide. I mean, Tracy showed us, I think, photo on a board yesterday, on the water. And I'm like, oh my God, we've got one at home, but I've never gone onto it, because always say no to yourself, to things like that. So that inspired me. So it's just doing things that are out of my comfort zone. So definitely my family has benefited. That ripple effect is amazing, because my children are seeing what I do. So they've known what Daddy does. They've known the business part of me in our business. But now they see me doing something that I absolutely love. I mean, I breathe and feel and talk real estate and what I do. And when we drive through, my first development that I did, and we sometimes drive by just to have a look at it, because sometimes you need that little reminder of, hey, I did that. I did that, and I'm so proud of that. That's been a big one for me. So, yeah. Look, the other thing is, when you get to a stage in your life where you do that life cycle and you realise you have enough, you have enough, you've got beautiful family, children, beautiful partner, friends, and you've been able to finally make that life for yourself where it's enough, you start to feel that thing inside where you want to give back. I mean, I've always been a giver, but you want to give beyond just the little things in life. You want to give to areas of people that don't know you. And it's almost like a silent giving. So it's giving away things and sharing. And one of the biggest things for me is my godmother died from a brain tumour going back about 8 years ago, and I was just sharing the story that I wear her ring as a memory, but also as a way to remind me to raise above my fears and look after myself, look after my heart, my health, and so forth. And it just happens that in Perth we have this beautiful company called Solaris Cancer Care. And we've been involved in an indirect way, going to the galas and auctions and always contributing. But something in the back of my mind, always said, is there anything else that we can do? And it's interesting how when you get to a stage where you're comfortable and you're happy that you want to contribute, these ideas come into your mind. And when Michael Meyer was on stage just, I think on Friday, I had such a beautiful moment, and it just happened that my husband was next to me. I literally just had this emotional moment where just cried, because sometimes in your life there's someone that says something or shares something that just makes everything, oh, so this is the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I took a piece of paper and I was scribbling the whole template for what's going to happen now. And I don't know whether it's going to happen, right? It's just a scribbled template, but it's my plan. And I wrote on the back, my plan. And it has to do with Solaris Care. And it has to do with that little dream of having a little farm somewhere. And it has to do with developing and building and offering accommodation to cancer patients who are coming from the regional areas of WA. And a friend of mine that works at Solaris Care just the other day said how much of a struggle it is for those patients and family members when they travel to Perth to find accommodation for a week or a month at an affordable, not too expensive kind of way. So when Michael was talking about the things that he does, again, it's like life just gave it to me. Now, I don't know what's going to happen to it. It's just a template. It's just my...
You're going to create it.
You're going to create
That's what's
it.
going to
Yeah,
happen with
so
that.
I guess it's that ripple effect that eventually you sort of spread it out.
Well done. So I guess the learnings along the way have been many and varied. A lot of massive growth in you personally, as well as the flow-on effect to family and things like that. What would you like to share to people that you've gone through the process of, ultimate contemplatum? What has it meant to you? What's the key things that you think has changed for you? Those learnings.
I think 2015 I nearly died. So the word coming alive, getting my life back as a woman, as a mum, as a wife, is probably the biggest one. Self-development. I didn't know that we need to self-develop ourselves. I didn't know that we can invest in ourselves, that we need to take a bit of resources and time and self-care. As women, we often take on and do and contribute and serve. So for me, the biggest thing was giving back to myself so I can be better for my family. And I remember in 2016 thinking to myself, oh my goodness, I'm now entering that decade to be 50 one day soon. I don't want to...
It's not that crazy.
Well, I didn't want to be crazy 50-year-old. And I said, I don't want to enter the next decade and actually have regrets and be exhausted and unhealthy and unchallenged and unfulfilled. I wanted to get into it in a different way. So for me personally, it's the fact that I'm growing, that I'm doing, that I'm contributing, that I'm part of a beautiful community. I'm learning from incredible mentors. That question really made me think, because I actually wrote down nothing. I would not regret one thing over the last 2 years. But then I thought, God, I've got to put something on there. And really what came to me is that property in Sydney a year ago, I didn't have to re-sign the tenancy. I actually wanted to either sell it or do something else with it. But again, when you're a giver and you've got a good heart, you think, oh, but that means the people and their children will have to relocate. And because we've relocated so much with our children, I felt for the children. So I did re-sign, and it was probably the biggest mistake I've done financially, but I don't regret it because I know those children had a home for another year before they had to move on to Canberra.
And you've more formulated what you're going to do with the property too now.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So, and health, invested into my health sooner. So I wasn't healthy last year. So I did say in Perth boot camp when I was speaking that it's because I was part of a mentorship program and I had someone behind me or next to me that I didn't give up, and I actually continued even though I wasn't well. And I remember attending one of the platinum boot camps, I think it was Melbourne last year, and I didn't have much energy even to sit there, but I said, just sit there, just turn up, just be. And then Melissa Fisher was on stage and she was talking about her beautiful work, and you get inspired. I remember I got so inspired, driven. I came back home and I said, I can do this. I can still do this. I can find the energy and I can get better. So really, I wasn't going to say nothing, but really those two things are the only things that I probably could say I would regret a little bit.
So obviously, you did start with quite a bit, but you've certainly added to it in 2 years, to the tune of around about $5 million in 2 years. And the cash flow obviously is now positive as opposed to negative, even though Sydney hasn't been turned around quite yet.
Absolutely. Look, I think, you know, listening to the stories on stage over the last 2 days, I think that I'd love to be able to learn how to generate more income, so it's positive cash flow in a bigger way. When you have that money, then you take the reliance off your one source of income or waiting game. You can do more, you can contribute more to others then. So that's what I'd like to do. But yeah, look, it's a great equity base. There's still a lot of work to do. I think that I'm most proud in the ability to be able to go equity, chunk deal, reduce debt, just in case something happens. You always have to be prepared for things, you know, never be afraid of doing things, but do in a smart way. Yeah.
Well, you're a great inspiration to everybody here, and I'm sure there's people out there that are going to go, that's me. If she can do it, I can do it. So.
Oh, look, absolutely. Absolutely. Just do it. I don't know whether there's another slide at the end of these. Oh my God, where'd you get this photo from? This has a little story actually. This is our friend Matthew. When I signed up for Quantum program in 2016, you know, I didn't have $10,000. I didn't have $5,000. But I had these beautiful friends. We do, Matthew and Alexandra, and that, you know, when you've got friends in your life that you want to do things and you want to help, and these were people that so wanted to get into the market. They were already in the market but wanted to do more, but they didn't have maybe that knowledge or the resources at the time. So I wanted Matthew to be involved in this, and I bought the Quantum program so he could be part of that with me. Now, so unfortunately he had to work away when the boot camp came, so I gave the Quantum to my son then. But Matthew finally joined ILRE18 this year with Alexandra, so this is where that photo's from.
Ah, there you go, because I kept looking and going, that's not your husband.
That's not my husband, no. So I had to justify this photo.
Well, when I saw your husband, and I put that photo in out of stock photos, etc., I'm going, no, that's not him. That's why I didn't want to show the next slide. Because I'm going, no, that's not him. I put the wrong slide in. And then you asked me, I'm going to have to show it now.
Because, you know, my husband was here on Friday, but he had to go back to Perth for this tournament to do with soccer. And I didn't know he was going to fly in this morning. So, yes, this photo would have been very interesting if I didn't explain it. But hey, to be honest, I'm just so happy that Matthew and Alexandra are part of this, because they already know a lot. They're already doing things and they have a positive cash flow. But that property actually stopped them because it doesn't have equity. So now Matthew goes, oh my God, that property is great for cash flow, but I haven't got equity and I can't do anything else because of it.
It's the balancing of that portfolio.
Yeah, so they're talking with Elizabeth in Perth now what to do to, you know, so to be able to move forward. Any advice? To be very honest, I mean, look, everything that we've seen and learned Friday and yesterday, I can't take away from that. That's every bit of that I would advise. Don't be afraid. So I was just thinking about these. A lot of people in Perth have asked me, like, how did you take such big action so quickly? And it may seem big and it may seem quickly if you are in the market that we were in 2015-16. So I would just say, go after what you want. Otherwise, you'll never have it. In 2016, time, I realised how precious time is, and you go through life, get so busy, and you don't think that the time is running away. And I realised that, hey, I can make money, I can make business decisions, I can take my kids to soccer tomorrow, but I'll never reverse another minute of my day. I'll never get my 20s and 30s that we've spent just working, right, and not really enjoying life. So just go after it, because if you don't go after it, you'll never have it. Get involved, so ask and network. In 2016, I had no friends in ILRE real estate. And, you know, I'd turn up to one of these events and go, oh, and I'm an introvert, so it's not an easy thing for an introvert to come into big events and go, how do I make friends? How do I meet you all? And I remember...
They meet you.
Exactly. And I remember standing there thinking, how do I do this? So to be here today and knowing so many of you and being friends with you, that's probably one of my biggest achievements, because I was there. And that's why when you see people who are standing alone, please go up to them and say hello. Not everyone's an extrovert, and not everyone has this ability just to go, hi, I'm here, and, can I stand and sort of talk with you? So for me, get involved, network, make friends with people that are new, include them, be inclusive. Inclusivity is very important to me. Step forward, otherwise you will always be in the same place. I read this somewhere, and so I put it there. If you don't move, if you don't make a step, you'll be where you are for most of your life. So if I didn't take the advice of this lovely Dimphna Bohol coming to Perth, and even though it was so hard to leave work and travel there and take a whole day, and I think I had to organise like 3 friends to pick up my 3 kids from here and there, I wouldn't be where I am today. And if I stayed in my fear, again, I wouldn't do what I do. And if I didn't self-develop, because I did PIP and I did Wealth Matrix, and we did go to Tony Robbins this year. Would I have done that prior to this? No, because it's expensive, and I would not have invested that money to myself. So invest in you. That's probably one of my biggest things, and dream big. 7 apartments with a JV, and I've never done a JV with anyone but my brother before. That's taking a risk. In 2016, when I still haven't been part of this community for too long, make your dreams big. Step up. I've always said to my children, there's a bar, and I heard, maybe it was a Tony Robbins thing years gone by. There's a bar, and if you think that that's where you can reach, you'll reach it most probably. But if you raise the bar above that, you will go beyond that line. And I've noticed with myself that if I've put my line above my expectation for myself, I may not have reached that high bar, but God damn it, I got higher than what I thought I was going to do. So, yeah, dream big.
Well done. Thank you, Basia.